Welcome to User Insights, a podcast series powered by UXArmy.
Thanks a lot for agreeing to come on our podcast called User Insights. Pleased to have you here. I would leave the stage to introduce yourself. So please feel free to do so.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Kelly Jura. For anyone who might benefit from an audio description, I am 5'1". I have blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing a top that's off-white with a black flat floral pattern. I'm the Vice President of Brand and User Experience for a company called ScreenPal. We used to be called Screencastomatic. And went through a very rigorous process through research and design to rename and rebrand in 2023 from Screencastomatic to ScreenPal.
Nice. Thanks a lot. And that introduction means a lot because accessibility is one of the most important aspect which is often ignored even now, and more so in this part of the world where I come from. So that's something on agenda for UXArmy. So thanks a lot for that lovely introduction.
Absolutely.
And let's dive into some of the questions that we have on board. So something that always bothers me in my own mind, like what is employee experience? By definitions, there are various definitions, but when it comes to a specific definition, so-called academic definition or practice definition, I would say, how would you define employee experience?
Yeah, employee experience is really interesting, and it's often an afterthought, but it is the experience that an employee has when they're interacting with your company in their day-to-day jobs, and kind of the impact that it has on their lives.
Yeah, I wonder though that what like how UX and EX, the employee experience so-called, are related, because there is a lot of talk about it, but I'm not sure what causes the strong relationship between these two.
Yeah, it really is interesting, and people tend to think of user experience, UX, they think of, CX, customer experience, and they think of EX as kind of different, siloed pieces, different pieces of experience. And really, they are incredibly interconnected. And just, a very relatable example would be when you reach out to customer support at a company, technical support or support for a product. And, just thinking through that experience, and, you're probably in a spot where you're somewhat frustrated. You're trying to solve a problem. You've probably tried all of the tools that you have in your toolbox to solve this problem. And you're reaching out to the support team for this organization, for this company. And that could really impact the end user experience. I could have a really phenomenal experience where the person is empathetic, where they understand where I'm coming from, where they're able to problem solve with me, make me feel empowered to solve the problem with them. And that could really solidify my relationship with that company, right? On the flip side of things, if you call, customer support or, technical support, and you think, wow, this person just hates their job. This was not helpful. They didn't help me at all. I still have the same problem I had before. I'm much more likely to go to another company to bring my business elsewhere. When you think about user experience, I think about journey mapping and looking at every single touch point, beyond just the digital touch point, that human aspect, because that really does have, this great impact on the end user experience, whether you're reaching out to someone on social, whether there's, potentially an insensitive tweet or something like that. Or you're reaching out to customer support. The human element is really important in the end user experience. And the more that you can have an employee experience where the people are engaged, where they understand and they're passionate about the product that you're producing, the better the end user experience will be, because the more likely they'll be able to speak on behalf of the brand. They'll be able to provide that really consistent, good experience. and meet and potentially exceed expectations for customers.
Yeah, in fact, the point that you mentioned about brand just triggered me because I still recall when I joined my first corporate job, there was always this point that you are representative of this brand. You are not just what you are or what your position is, but you are living and moving and around brand which you have joined. So it's so now I can somewhat relate when you mentioned that point. um, it is also said that good EX leads to good UX, and I think you described just now with the call center example. Are there other, like, what could be the aspects that actually create a good employee experience? Would you, if you can discuss that a little bit, that would be great.
Sure. You know, it's really interesting because, we put so much thought into the end user experience. We, make sure that the experience is beautiful. We make sure that, it delights our users. And it's kind of funny because you start looking at the tools that internal people are using, and they're often, just antiquated systems. You've maybe added a bunch of band-aids to these systems just to make them functional. And you think about what an employee goes through. You have to train them on the software, and then what they go through day to day, that little friction in their day that they're like, I've got to open 15 tabs to do this one thing. Or, I have these extra meetings that really aren't necessary for my role. Or, I'm inundated with whatever it is, being able to look at their experience, much like you would look at a user experience, and see those friction points, those points where there are inconsistencies. I'm expecting my company to behave in this way, they behave in a different way. That's a point of friction. Or I'm expecting to be able to quickly cross this off my list and it takes me 15 minutes. That's a point of friction. So being able to kind of take some of those UX processes that we do on the end user experience and look internally is really important. I think a lot about, journey mapping, because I love journey mapping. I look at, what an employee's experience is throughout the journey of their employment with a company. And I look at, task analysis and things like that. Where is this person spending a lot of their time? And is it necessary? I think these are all things that we could do. It's interesting though, because I typically work for companies that are, at a high growth stage, really entrepreneurial, really agile companies. And it's really interesting because sometimes the employee experience when you're, 30 employees, 40, 50 employees is one thing. And you feel like you have a good handle on it because every single person on the team, kind of their life, their career, kind of interact with them daily. But as your company grows, it becomes even more important to look at the employee experience, because if you're not actively looking at that employee experience, the employee experience happens organically, and it happens whether you look at it or you don't look at it. Employee experience happens. So, it's kind of funny. You don't want something to take shape that you're not endorsing. So it's really important, no matter what stage your company's at, whether you are a small startup or you're a large corporation, to understand what that experience is like and take action on it to improve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I think back about how things have changed since COVID, um, when I read a little about EX, the information that I received was that spaces matter a lot in employee experience. And when they say spaces, it's about the work environment, the room, and the lights, and so on as well. So now a lot of work moved hybrid now. Do you see that as one of the challenge to achieve a good EX? Do you see that as one of the talking points, at least in the EX world?
Yeah. So I find working remote to be something that is incredibly beneficial to a lot of people, but it is another variable. It's another challenge that you have. There was a report, I recently referenced it, but Deloitte had put out this report on the C-suite's impact on employee well-being. And they were saying that people in management and C-suite roles vastly overestimate how their employees are doing. So that's physical health, mental health, financial health. Across the board, if you asked a manager or a C-suite person, how are my employees and how is my team doing? They would say, oh, they're doing really well, and then when you ask the employees the same question, they're not as confident. They don't feel like they are succeeding in the ways that they want to succeed. And, I think in a remote and a hybrid world, it takes much more intention to connect with employees. You have to make space to hear your employees, see your employees, and understand what's going on in their lives. And things that might just, again, organically happen if you're in the office. You might, witness something, you might hear something. There might be just some kind of quick conversation that happens in between meetings. You may not have that as easily in a remote or a hybrid situation. In the Deloitte report, I will say, I personally don't think that it's because the C-suite isn't empathetic or they don't care about their employees. I don't think that that's the case at all. I do think, though, it does take, actively meeting with your team to really understand what's going on and just making the time to connect with them. Again, these are more variables. These are more things that could get in the way of really illustrating a complete picture. So, the hybrid and remote work, I personally work remote. I love it. I certainly think that it opens up opportunities for people across the globe, to take part in, teams that they otherwise would not be able to work with and for. But you have to be much more intentional about the culture and much more intentional about the employee experience, to make change happen and to really get that complete picture.
Absolutely. And have you I remember very well, Standard Chartered is, I think they were one of the very well known companies who actually who actually did a lot of work on EX. I did not follow up really to figure out where exactly that's happening, where that is now. But do you see any in your part of the world? Do you see any companies who are leading this initiatives much better than others?
Yeah, for sure. I think the companies that come to mind are the ones that are incredibly consistent across channels. I cannot speak from experience. I've not worked for Slack, but I think that they probably have a really good definition within their company of how each employee lives the brand of being a Slack employee. Because when you read the release notes, when you look at their social presence, when you look at their responses, when you reach out to support, when you see the materials that they produce, everything is incredibly consistent. And that to me is a sign that there is a strong company culture and there's a good focus on employee experience. I'm just going to reference Deloitte one more time. I was actually just reading their 2024 report on the global workplace, and they were saying that, when organizations increase the number of engaged employees, they improve organizational outcomes. And they actually say that there is 78% less absenteeism. There's 30% less in quality defects, and that translates to end user experience in a 23% increase in profitability, 10% increase in customer loyalty. So, when I think about employee experience and when I think about companies that really have a strong employee experience, I think about the companies that have that strong brand presence, regardless of where you're seeing them, whether that's in advertising and marketing and the product itself and in the human element. I think that those are all signs that people are really managing that experience.
Yeah, so something that also comes to my mind all the time is what roles do researcher play in employee experience, or is it something that we should just push it to the HR department or C-suite? That's something which always stays in my mind. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because so many times, HR is taking responsibility for employee experience, and really it's up to everyone at the company to take an active role in employee experience. One of the things that can certainly improve the employee experience is, again, getting that research to really illustrate the full picture of what's happening. As I said earlier, the C-suite often overestimates how employees are doing. So having somebody who has a research background and being able to tap into your existing team and the skill sets that they have is, certainly something that could really move the needle on a positive experience. I think about the tools and the research methods that we conduct as part of employee, as part of user experience rather. And, you certainly could use those same processes on the employee experience. You could conduct surveys, you could, through observation, look at somebody's day and get a complete picture of all of the different things that happen throughout that day. You could certainly do journey mapping, and you could do task analysis, things like that. These are a number of things that we already do for user experience. So being able to kind of tap into our own teams and use the skills that we already have and partner on employee experience is definitely something that I haven't seen done frequently. I don't see people talking about that a lot, but it seems like a missed opportunity for me.
Yeah, I think so too, because a happy employee um, probably is advocate of your brand, and then every moment they of truth they have with the customers are likely to bring in more customers or create more happy people around. So it does make full sense. It's just that, like you say, I also don't see that happening so much in practice. So as a trend, what do you see in the last 2 years? Have you seen EX kind of trying like trying to reestablish itself, or kind of going downhill, or just it is there where it stably where it was? How do you see that going as time goes by?
Yeah. You had mentioned earlier that the pandemic and kind of moving to remote and hybrid work was really disruptive. I think there was a lot of talk about it during that time, trying to figure this out. And unfortunately, it's not as talked about in kind of what I'm seeing as it was in 2020, 2021. I think people are just kind of at a point where they're kind of just living with their circumstances. I know in tech, there's certainly some instability in the job markets right now. So I think, unfortunately, it's keeping people in positions that they aren't really passionate about. At least in the United States, what I'm seeing, people are hesitant to leave their jobs if they have jobs, or the jobs just aren't there for them to move seamlessly into. So, unfortunately, you do have a lot more people who are staying in roles a little bit longer than they would have normally been staying in those roles. And, it's unfortunate because, as you look at burnout and you look at employees that just, aren't engaged in the day-to-day activities, the quiet quitting, things like that, it's not great for the work experience at large. And it's not good for kind of company and employee morale. So that's what I have been seeing kind of as a trend, and just, in speaking with other tech leaders. There's definitely this instability is not helping employee experience right now.
Well, exactly, and I think it's also to do, like you rightly said, is the instability in the job market altogether. It's the uncertainties, and a lot is to do with the uncertainty and the anxiety surrounding the AI onset, I would say. because nobody knows what's happening. So everybody seems to be playing a cautious game and slowly coming to terms with reality. So I still see somewhat the jobs picking up. But in the other podcast, we were discussing with another UX colleague that it's all about like now people are trying to take up multiple roles. Sometimes the user experience researchers aren't very clear, like which role they should take. Should they take a UX researcher role, or should they expand across product manager? And there are all, like as usual, there are many funny job posts with all kinds of things. So yeah, I think looking at all those factors and what you said, I think it seems that the EX is kind of right now, it's a little bit downplayed as such, but it has to come back because the facts remain as they were. So
Right. People will look at employee experience when there's a major problem to solve typically. And that's, a merger, an acquisition, things like that, or a global pandemic. You start looking at those internal tools, you start looking at the employee experience. But in the day-to-day, that's when it's really important to look at the employee experience, because the experience, again, it happens whether you want to focus on it or not. And unfortunately, things can turn into something that you don't want to happen if you're not actively nurturing it.
I mean, I have not witnessed employee experience initiative myself in my professional life. So have you gone through any have you participated in any of such initiative yourself?
So, it's one of those things, when Screencastomatic was going to rename and rebrand as ScreenPal, that was a really, really exciting time. But to execute something like that when you're dealing with a global company, that has a presence on, desktop software, Chrome extension, mobile apps, web platform, marketing, all these third-party integrations and listings and things like that. That was a really important time for our company. And it was a really important time for every single employee to really get on the same page. So I think that was critical for us all to really believe in the mission, to believe in what we were doing. And it was just such a highly orchestrated effort that, I'm very proud of, but it required every single person in our company to really believe in it. And as such, we were able to rename and relaunch with a whole new design system, new name, new brand, across all of these different platforms within 24 hours, which is really just an incredible achievement. But that would not have happened if we didn't really have this close connection with every single employee, because every single person on the ScreenPal team really did play that pivotal role in making it happen. If we didn't have all of that support from our teammates, we wouldn't have been able to, do something so big in such a small amount of time.
Absolutely, it's a big motivator, and I think it's a way where people start to look in one direction. It's the famous exercise of everybody looking at one direction, and that really multiplies the power of of a company when everybody in the company is unidirectionally thinking
Absolutely.
about success and what goals of the company are. So yeah, so that's all for today. Thanks a lot for coming on this podcast. Um, we will take care of the recording break that happened in between. And thanks a lot, and have a great day ahead. And then followed by a very happy weekend. So please take care, and then
Thank you. You too. Great. Yeah, let's talk soon. It was nice to connect.
thank you.
Thank you.
See you then. Bye bye, Kelly.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of User Insights. We hope you gained valuable insights from our conversation.